For more than 70 years, the UFO mystery has lived in government files, witness statements, pilot reports, radar notes, weather checks, photographs, declassified memos, official conclusions, unresolved cases, and pages of uncertainty. But today, we are entering a new era, a new miniseries on UFO to UAP, a 6-part investigation called From UFO Files to UAP Science. Across this series, we're going to take the most important historical UFO cases and ask a modern question. What would happen if those cases were investigated today? What if Project Blue Book had access to artificial intelligence? What if the 1952 Washington sightings were analyzed with modern radar correlation, satellite tracking, and machine learning? What if Rendlesham Forest had thermal imaging, sensor fusion, phone metadata, and chain of custody standards? What if the old UFO archive was no longer just a collection of reports, but a data set? Because that is the transformation happening right now. The UFO story is no longer just about strange lights, saucer-shaped objects, declassified files, or official denials. It is becoming a science problem, a data problem, a sensor problem, a military reporting problem, a transparency problem, a government accountability problem, and perhaps most importantly, a public trust problem. In the 20th century, UFOs were investigated as reports. In the 21st centuries, UAP are being investigated as data. That shift may define the future of disclosure. Welcome to UFO to UAP. I am your host, Matt Tones, and this is episode 1 of our new mini-series, From UFO Files to UAP Science. Today's episode is titled UAP Disclosure, From Project Blue Book to AARO, How UFO Reports Became Data. We're beginning here because if you want to understand the future of UAP disclosure, you have to understand the system it evolved from. Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, the Air Force files, the historical cases, the official explanations, the unresolved sightings, the culture of stigma, the problem of missing data, and the long road from handwritten UFO reports to modern UAP officers, sensor analysis, AI-assisted detection, and scientific review. Because the modern UAP era did not appear out of nowhere. It is built on the failures, limitations, and unfinished questions of the old UFO era. So today we ask, how did UFO reports become UAP data? And why does that change everything? Let's begin. For decades, the phrase UFO investigation carried a very specific image. A witness sees something in the sky, a report is filed. Someone asks whether it was Venus, a weather balloon, an aircraft, a meteor, a satellite, a hoax, or a misidentified object. A form is completed, a conclusion is assigned, the case is closed or sometimes not closed. That was the old model. It was report-driven, human-driven, case-by-case, often reactive, and often limited by the evidence available at the time. That matters because the historical UFO era was not only shaped by what people saw, it was shaped by what investigators could measure. And in many cases, they could not measure enough. A witness could describe the color, the shape, the direction, the apparent speed, the duration, the location, the weather, the emotional reaction. But unless that sighting was supported by radar, photographs, multiple witnesses, military logs, or physical traces, investigators were often left with a narrative, a story, a report, simply a claim. That does not mean the witness was wrong. It means the evidence was incomplete. And incomplete evidence has haunted the UFO subject from the beginning. This is one of the biggest reasons the modern shift from UFO to UAP matters. UFO culture was built around sightings. UAP investigation is increasingly built around data. That is a different world, a world of sensors, metadata, radar returns, infrared imagery, signal analysis, and flight tracking, satellite coverage, weather databases, machine learning, pattern recognition, chain of custody, cross-domain detection, and structured reporting. The question is no longer only what did someone see, The question is, what did the system record? That shift is the spine of this mini-series, because when you take historical UFO cases and place them beside modern detection technology, something becomes clear. Many old cases did not fail because they were obviously false. Many failed because the systems around them were not capable of preserving enough evidence to resolve them. That is the bridge between Project Blue Book and AARO. Project Blue Book collected reports. AARO is supposed to analyze UAP through a more scientific and data-driven framework. And between those 2 points is the entire history of modern UFO disclosure. To understand that, we need to go back to the beginning of the official American UFO investigation era. Before Project Blue Book, there was Project Sign. Project Sign began in the late 1940s at a moment when the United States was trying to understand a wave of reports that seemed to describe unusual objects in the sky. This was not long after World War II. The Cold War was beginning. The Soviet Union was becoming the central strategic concern. Aerospace technology was advancing rapidly. Radar, jets, rockets, nuclear weapons, intelligence programs, and high-altitude military systems were changing how governments thought about the sky. So when people reported strange aerial objects, the question was not just, are these visitors from somewhere else? The immediate official question was more practical. Are these Soviet? Are these secret aircraft? Are these threats? Are these misidentifications? Are these psychological effects? Are these natural phenomenon? The national security context matters because UFOs were never only a mystery of belief. They were always also a mystery of airspace, and airspace is military territory. From the beginning, the UFO subject sat at the intersection of public curiosity and defense concern. Project Sign was followed by Project Grudge. Project Grudge was more skeptical, more dismissive, and more inclined to reduce the UFO issue to misidentification, psychology, and public anxiety. Then, Blue Book. Blue Book became the longest running and most famous official Air Force UFO investigation. It is the archive people still return to. It is the file system that shaped public understanding. It is the historical baseline for government UFO investigation, and it is where we see the old UFO model most clearly. Project Blue Book collected thousands of reports. Some were identified, some were likely aircraft, some were astronomical objects, some were balloons, some weather events, some were hoaxes, some were mistakes, and those that were uncertain, and some remained unidentified. That final category is what kept the mystery alive, unidentified. A word that sounds simple but carries enormous weight, because unidentified does not mean extraterrestrial. It does not mean impossible. It does not mean advanced technology, and it does not mean non-human intelligence. It means the available information was not enough to produce a conventional identification. That distinction is essential, and yet in the public imagination, unidentified became a doorway into speculation, a doorway into suspicion, a doorway into belief and distrust. The Air Force could say that unexplained cases did not prove anything extraordinary, but the public could look at the same files and say, if they don't know what these were, why are we supposed to stop asking questions? That tension has never gone away. It still exists today. AARO can say a case remains unresolved. Skeptics can say unresolved does not mean extraordinary. Believers can say unresolved means the mystery is real. The argument is the same, only the language has changed. Question for you. When you hear that a UFO or UAP case remains unidentified, what does that mean to you? Does it simply mean insufficient data, or does it suggest something more extraordinary? Drop your answer in the comments, because this one word has shaped the entire disclosure debate. Now, Project Blue Book is often remembered in two very different ways. For skeptics, it represents the government's attempt to rationally examine UFO reports and conclude that the phenomenon did not represent a national security threat or evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles. For believers and disclosure advocates, it represents something else, a system that investigated thousands of cases but failed to satisfy the public. a system that reduced many reports far too quickly, a system that may have been more interested in closing cases than actually understanding them, a system that left 701 cases unidentified, a system that became part of the culture of official dismissal. Both interpretations matter because Project Blue Book was not just an investigation, it was a public interface. It was the way the government communicated with citizens about the unknown. And that communication shaped trust. When witnesses felt dismissed, trust declined. When explanations seemed forced, trust declined. When files were incomplete, trust declined. When conclusions did not match public intuition, trust declined. When official language sounded final but the evidence felt unresolved, trust declined. This is a major lesson for the modern UAP era. The government cannot simply say, "We investigated." It must show how. The government cannot simply say, "We found no threat." It must explain what was assessed. The government cannot simply say insufficient data. It must explain why the data was insufficient, what data was missing, and how future cases will be handled better. That is the difference between investigation and public trust. Project Blue Book teaches us that the official investigation without sufficient transparency does not close the mystery. It can only deepen it. Now, let's talk about what Project Blue Book actually had to work with. Most historical UFO cases were built from human reports. A person or group of people saw something. They described it. An investigator tried to match the description to known objects or events. That approach has value. Witness testimony matters, especially when the witness is trained. A pilot, a radar operator, a police officer, a military officer, an astronomer, a scientist, a group of independent observers, but witness testimony does have limits. People misjudge distance and misjudge speed. People misjudge altitude and misperceive size. People interpret motion incorrectly and remember events differently over time. Even trained observers can be surprised by unfamiliar conditions. This does not mean witnesses are unreliable in a simplistic sense. It means human observation is one layer of evidence, not the entire evidence chain. Project Blue Book often existed in a world where that human layer dominated. A witness account could be powerful, but without corroborating data, the case remained vulnerable. That is why so many historical cases feel permanently unresolved. The evidence was not preserved in the way we would want today. There may have been no radar data, or radar data existed but was not retained. There may have been photographed, but they were low quality. There may have been multiple witnesses, but no synchronized timeline. There may have been military logs, but not enough technical detail. It could be environmental conditions, but no precise metadata. There may have been a real event, but no way to reconstruct it scientifically. And this is the historical UFO problem. Not just secrecy, not just stigma, data poverty. The evidence was thin, scattered, analog, subjective, and often incomplete. That is why the shift to modern UAP science is so important. Today, an event can potentially be cross-checked across multiple systems, including military radar, civilian radar, ADS-B flight tracking, weather radar, satellite imagery, infrared sensors, electro-optical systems, signal intelligence, acoustic data, phone footage, astronomical databases, drone registrations, aircraft routes, launch records, orbital object tracking, AI-assisted anomaly detection. This does not mean every modern case is easy, far from it, but the potential evidence environment is dramatically different. A sighting is no longer just a story, it can become a data event. That is the bridge from UFO Files to UAP Science, and that bridge is where this mini-series will live. In upcoming episodes, we're going to return to famous historical cases and ask, what did investigators have then? What data would we demand now? How would modern technology change the case? Would AI help? Would satellites help? Would radar correlation help? Would sensor fusion help? Would better chain of custody help? Would the case become stronger, or would it collapse under modern scrutiny? That is the honest question. because modern tools do not always make a case more mysterious. Sometimes they make it less mysterious. Sometimes a famous UFO case might be quickly identified today. A satellite pass, a drone, a balloon, a missile test, a weather anomaly, a military exercise, a planet, a re-entry event. But sometimes modern tools may do the opposite. They may make the case harder to dismiss. If multiple sensors detect the same object, if flight data excludes known aircraft, if weather data excludes atmospheric explanations, if radar and infrared match, if AI flags anomalous behavior, if the chain of custody is clean, if trained observers and sensors agree, then the case becomes stronger. That is the promise of modern UAP research, not to prove every mystery extraordinary, but to separate weak cases from strong cases, to move from story to signal, from anecdote to evidence, from files to data. Now, let's bring AARO into the picture. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office represents the modern institutional response to UAP. Its existence signals that the US government no longer treats the issue in the same way it did during the Blue Book era. The language has changed. UFO has become UAP. Flying saucers have become anomalous phenomena. Witness reports have become data streams. Air Force investigation has become all-domain coordination. The sky is no longer the only domain. The modern framework includes air, sea, space, and potentially transmedium or cross-domain questions. That does not mean the government has answers. It means the government has recognized that the old language and old structures were no longer enough. AARO's public mission is not to validate UFO folklore, it is to reduce technical and intelligence surprises. That phrase is important. Technical surprise, intelligence surprise. Those are national security concepts. They mean the government does not want to be caught off guard by unknown objects, unknown technologies, unknown adversary capabilities, sensor failures, or unexplained events near sensitive areas. This is not the same as saying UAP are alien. It is saying that unknowns in national security environments are unacceptable. That is the modern shift. UAP are being treated less as a question of public fascination and more of a question of detection, attribution, and mitigation. Detection means, did something happen? Attribution means, what was it? Mitigation means, what do we do about it? That is the radically different model from the old question, did someone see a flying saucer? This is why Blue Book to AARO transition matters. Blue Book was largely built around reports. AARO is supposed to be built around analysis. Blue Book asked what a sighting might have been. AARO must ask how an unidentified event moves through national security systems. Who saw it? Which sensors recorded it? What domain did it occupy? Was it airborne, seaborne, space-related? Was it near a national security area? Was it a drone? Was it foreign surveillance? Was it a balloon? Was it sensor error? Was it natural? Was it classified US activity? Was it unresolved? What data exists? Who owns that data? Can it be declassified? Can it be shared? And can it be analyzed scientifically? These questions show the modern reality. UAP disclosure is no longer just about objects. It is about systems, and systems produce data. Question for you. Do you trust modern sensor data more than eyewitness testimony when it comes to UAP cases? Or do you think the strongest case requires both? Tell me in the comments, because this is one of the biggest differences between the old UFO era and the modern UAP era. Now, one of the most important differences between Project Blue Book and AARO is the public expectation around science. Project Blue Book operated in an era when the government could collect reports, issue conclusions, and largely control the public narrative. Today, that is much harder. The internet changes everything. A blurry video can go global in minutes. A pilot interview can reach millions. A declassified memo can be analyzed by independent researchers. A government report can be compared against leaked testimony. A radar claim can be debated by engineers. A satellite pass can be checked by amateurs. A suspected balloon can be tracked online. A media can be confirmed by public data. This means modern UAP investigation cannot rely on authority alone. It needs methodology. The public no longer accepts "trust us." The public increasingly asks, "show us the data. Show us the chain of custody. Show us the sensor conditions. Show us the methodology. Show us the alternatives considered. Show us what was ruled out. Show us why a case remains unresolved." That is a healthy demand, but it is difficult for government because much of the relevant data may be classified. Radar capabilities may be classified. Sensor ranges may be classified. Platform locations may be classified. Military operations may be classified. Intelligence sources and methods may be classified. This is why UAP transparency is so hard. The government may have better data than the public sees, but if the public cannot see it, trust remains limited. This was true during Blue Book. It is still true today. The difference is that today the public is more technically literate, more skeptical of institutions, and more capable of independent analysis. That means modern UAP disclosure must do something Blue Book often failed to do. It must explain uncertainty. It must explain what is known, what is not known, what was ruled out, what data exists, what data is missing, what can be released, what cannot be released, and why. This is where science becomes essential. Science does not require certainty at the beginning. Science begins with uncertainty. But science requires method. It requires testable claims, reproducible processes, clear standards, evidence quality, error analysis and data preservation, peer review where possible, and honesty about limitations. That is where the historical UFO subject often lacked. Not curiosity, there was plenty of curiosity. Not public interest, there was massive public interest. What it lacked was a durable scientific infrastructure, a way to collect high-quality data before the moment was gone, a way to analyze events across multiple sensors, a way to separate anecdote from measurable signal, a way to preserve the evidence before it disappeared into archives, classified channels, or memory. That is the opportunity now, but opportunity is not the same as success. AARO and the modern UAP system still face enormous challenges. Data remains inconsistent. Many reports are low quality. Witness accounts vary. Sensors are not always designed to capture UAP. Military systems may track threats, not scientific anomalies. Some data is classified. Some data may not be retained. Some events may be sensor artifacts. Some may be drones. Some may be balloons. Some may be misidentified aircraft. Some may be adversary systems. Some may remain unresolved simply because the evidence is insufficient. This is where the public must remain disciplined. Modern UAP research should not become a machine for confirming belief. It should become a machine for sorting reality. That means many cases will be explained. Some will be downgraded. Some will turn out to be ordinary. Some will turn out to be sensor errors. Some will be embarrassing. Some will remain unresolved. And a small number may be truly difficult. That small number is where the serious mystery lives. Project Blue Book had its 701 unidentified cases. Modern UAP research may also have its residual set. Cases that survive analysis. Cases where multiple data streams agree. Cases where normal explanations fail. And cases that are not just strange, but well documented. Those are the cases that matter most. Not the loudest cases, not the most viral cases, the best cases, the ones with the strongest data. Now let's talk about the old archive as a data set. This is one of the most important ideas in the entire mini-series. For decades, Project Blue Book files were treated as historical documents. Researchers read them case by case. A sighting in one town, a report from one pilot, a memo from one base, a photograph from one witness. But in the modern era, the archive can be treated differently. It can become data. Imagine digitizing thousands of historical UFO reports and asking new questions. Where did reports cluster? What times of year? What weather conditions? What military bases? What astronomical events? What aircraft activity? What terminology changed over time? How did explanations vary by region? How did investigators classify cases? Which cases had radar? Which ones had photographs? Which had multiple witnesses? Which were near sensitive facilities? Which ones remained unidentified? Which explanations were weak? Which cases would be treated differently today? This is where data science becomes powerful. AI does not magically solve UFOs, but it can help identify patterns humans may miss. It can compare language across thousands of reports and detect clusters and flag inconsistencies. It can match cases against known astronomical or military events and help prioritize cases for deeper review. It can separate noisy records from high-value records and help create a map of the historical unknown. That is a very different way to treat UFO history. Not as folklore, not as isolated legend, but as a record system. A messy, incomplete, human-made record system. But still a system. And once you treat it as a system, you can ask better questions. Project Blue Book may have ended in 1969, but the data did not vanish. The files remain, the cases remain, the unresolved category remains, the public interest remains, and now modern tools can return to that archive with new methods. That does not mean every conclusion will change. Many historical cases will remain impossible to resolve because the data is too poor. But some may become clearer, and perhaps a few may become more interesting. This is why this mini-series matters. We are not simply retelling old UFO stories. We are asking how old cases survive modern standards. That is the bridge. History on one side, science on the other, and disclosure in the middle. Question for you. Which historical UFO case would you most want to see reinvestigated with modern AI, radar analysis, satellite data, and sensor fusion? Drop the case name in the comments because your answers may shape future episodes. Now let's compare the two eras directly. Project Blue Book era was shaped by paper. The AARO era was shaped by data. The Blue Book era was shaped by witness reports. The AARO era must integrate sensors. The Blue Book era was shaped by air sightings. The modern UAP era is all domain. The Blue Book era was shaped by public anxiety over flying saucers, whereas the modern era is shaped by national security, drones, aerospace surveillance, foreign technology, and public transparency. The Blue Book era often reduced cases to explanations. The modern era should produce confidence levels. That difference matters. A modern UAP system could not simply say, this was a balloon, this was a drone, this was unresolved. It should say, based on the available data, we assess with low, medium, or high confidence that the object was likely this category. It should explain what evidence supports that conclusion. It should explain what evidence is missing. It should explain why the confidence level is limited. That is scientific language, not absolute certainty, confidence, evidence, uncertainty, limitations. This is how UAP investigation becomes more credible, because the public does not need every answer to be dramatic. The public needs the process to be trustworthy. That is what Blue Book failed to achieve fully, and that is what AARO must achieve if modern disclosure is going to matter. But there is another difference. The Blue Book era ended with official closure. The modern UAP era is beginning with official reopening, and that is a profound shift. In 1969, the Air Force ended Project Blue Book. The official message was essentially that UFOs did not represent a national security threat, did not show evidence of advanced unknown technology beyond modern science, and did not prove extraterrestrial vehicles. That conclusion shaped decades of stigma. The institutional message was clear. The matter was closed. But the public never fully accepted that. Witnesses kept reporting, researchers kept digging, archives kept being studied, pilots kept seeing things, new military cases emerged. The Nimitz Tic Tac encounter changed the modern conversation. The Pentagon videos changed the public conversation. Congressional hearings changed the political conversation. AARO changed the institutional conversation, and now UAP disclosure is no longer closed. It is open again, but open in a different way. not open as belief, open as investigation. That is why the path from Project Blue Book to AARO is so important. It shows that the UFO issue did not disappear when the government ended one program, it changed form. It moved from Air Force files to public memory, from public memory to journalism, from journalism to congressional oversight, from congressional oversight to UAP officers, from UAP officers to scientific advisory structures, from historical cases to modern data systems. That is the evolution from UFO Files to UAP Science. Now, what does this mean for the public? First, it means old cases should be treated with both respect and caution. Respect because many witnesses were sincere and some cases remain genuinely interesting. Caution because many old cases lack the data required for modern conclusions. Second, it means modern cases should be held to a higher standard. We live in a world of advanced sensors. If a case is serious, we should ask for more than just a blurry clip. We should ask for metadata, sensor context, multiple sources, independent analysis, chain of custody, classification review. Third, it means disclosure is not only about releasing files, it is about improving systems. A file release tells us what was recorded. A better system ensures future events are recorded properly. Fourth, it means the public must learn to tolerate uncertainty. Some cases will remain unresolved. That is not failure. The failure is pretending uncertainty is certainty. Fifth, it means science must enter the field without stigma, not to validate every claim, but to create better methods, better questions, better data, better evidence standards. This is the future of serious UAP research. Not belief, not ridicule, method. The old UFO era asked, do you believe? The modern UAP era should ask, what does the data show? And when the data is not enough, it should ask, how do we collect better data next time? That is the entire shift. That is why this mini-series begins with Project Blue Book and AARO, because one represents the old record. The other represents the modern attempt to build a new framework, and between them is the question that defines the entire UFO to UAP journey. Can the unknown be studied seriously enough to become knowable? As we close this first episode, let's look ahead. In episode 2 of this mini-series, we will take one of the most famous early UFO events in American history, the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO wave. Radar returns over the nation's capital, military concern, public pressure, official explanations, and a case that still sits near the center of UFO history. But we will not simply retell it. We will ask, what would modern radar, AI, satellite tracking, flight databases, and sensor fusion do with that case today? Would it become easier to explain or harder? That is the test of this series. We are going to take history seriously, but we're not going to leave it trapped in the past, because the future of UAP disclosure depends on understanding both sides. The files and the sensors, the witnesses and the metadata, the archive and the algorithm, the old reports and the new science, the mystery and the method. Final question for you. Do you think the modern UAP era will finally solve the old UFO mystery, or will better technology simply produce better questions? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to hear where you stand as we begin this mini-series. This has been UFO to UAP. I'm Matt Tones. If you found this episode valuable, follow the show. Share it with someone interested in UFO disclosure, Project Blue Book, AARO, declassified UFO files, military sightings, UAP science, AI detection, and the future of the unexplained. And remember, Project Blue Book gave us the files. AARO gives us the framework. But the real question is whether modern science can finally do what history could not. Turn the unknown into evidence.